So I wanted to do a show and tell ASMR video about witchcraft, about paganisms, and detailing and explaining what it's about, as well as explaining what it's not in terms of dispelling myths. So if you talk about paganism, the best way to describe it, paganism is an earth religion, and there's several earth religions that are celebrated all over the world, and they tend to be very, very old. The best way to really understand that is if you imagine a huge tree trunk, and if you imagine different branches coming off that, each of those branches represent a different earth religion. So if the tree trunk represents paganism, which is the generic term for earth religions, one tree branch might represent Druidry, another shamanism, another witchcraft, another one might be Wicca. There's all kinds, and what one person will describe as an earth religion won't be necessarily what another one will be, although there will be similarities, because every single earth religion works with the earth's energies, works with the moon, works with the changing of the seasons. But obviously each different pathway that someone follows within that, like Druidry or witchcraft or Wicca, it will be slightly different. Personally, I don't subscribe to the Wicca religion, although its basis and roots are technically old. It is actually one of the modern ones that came about during the 1950s by Gerald Gardner. And the reason I don't necessarily follow Wicca myself and don't call myself a Wiccan is that it's very structured, and while that really worked for some people, that doesn't necessarily work with me. So when I talk about a structured religion like Wicca, I'm talking about the need to work with different elements and rules. So if you're a Wiccan, you wouldn't necessarily carry out a spell on a certain day of the week if, according to your spell books, that day of the week wasn't the right time to do that spell. You would work with specific colours corresponding to that particular spell you want to do, the right time of the month, the right moon phase. But for me, who prefers to follow the really natural ways of doing things, I find that too structured and like to work with what feels right at the time. Although I do work with the moon phases and the moon energies, which is dependent on what you want to create and what spell you want to do, but I'll explain that a little bit later. So predominantly Wicca is very popular these days, but I find it too structured in the do's and don'ts of when you can do a certain spell and when you can't, although as I said, that does work really well for some people. The main thing that can be said really about paganism and earth religions is that there's a lot of misconceptions about what it is, and over the years, over the centuries, the Christian Church has really created a lot of myths around it, saying it's evil, that it's to do with the devil, which means that when you talk to someone and tell them that you're a pagan or indeed you're a witch, they're understandably very frightened because they don't understand about it. But if you understand that the devil is actually a Christian concept, it can't possibly be part of an earth religion, because that's mixing religions. And if you're a witch, then you can't necessarily be a Christian, so working with the devil would not be something that works in witchcraft. You just wouldn't do. But the most important thing about witchcraft, and I guess I should say paganism, is that paganism and all the faiths and pathways coming off it, it has nothing whatsoever to do with evil. It's about healing. It's about working with nature's energies. it's about doing spells and rituals to do good. One of the things with the Wiccan religion, and that I actually use in my day-to-day life and my day-to-day beliefs, is a saying. Whereas a lot of religions have a list of rules which you have to follow. With Christianity, it's the Ten Commandments. The only thing that's similar in pagan religion and Wiccan religion is one rule. And translated, it says, "And harm ye none, do what ye will." And that means you are free to do whatever you like, as long as what you are doing doesn't harm anyone or yourself. So of course, using a spell to do harm isn't really what paganism's about, and you shouldn't be doing that. Another aspect of spell work in paganism and witchcraft is ethics. So although it's all very well saying, I only do spells to do good or to do healing, perhaps spells to help myself, spells to help others, a lot of people like the idea of love spells. And they like the idea of doing a spell to make someone fall in love with someone else. And that's also a big no-no in witchcraft, because that's seen as manipulating someone and tampering with their hearts. And if you're using a spell to control someone else, that's part of doing harm, which is why it's something else that you shouldn't be doing. I mean, of course, you do get people who call themselves witches and to actually carry out black magic. And I find that really sad, because these people are giving witchcraft a bad name. But I suppose it's parallel to people in Christianity and in Islam and other faiths who do bad things, who do things that harm others. A lot of Christians would say, well, that's not part of the Christian religion, that's not part of Islam, that's not what it's about. And they'd be right, because it'll be these people that are giving their religion a bad name. And that's just the same with witchcraft and paganism. One of the things that's really good about witchcraft, and when I'm talking about witchcraft, I do mean that in the general sense. So that can also mean paganism. But the witchcraft I'm talking about is natural witchcraft, which is one of the oldest forms. Is that you can pick and choose your own deities. With some religions, you're worshipping one particular god. But with witchcraft, you work with who and the type of energies you feel comfortable with. So whether that's the Green Man, whose existence spans centuries. If you look right back into the 12th, 13th centuries, there's a lot of references to the Green Man in the UK, and you can see his image in actually a lot of churches. He's often depicted with leaves. He's made up of leaves. So you might want to work with the energies of the Green Man, or of Mother Nature, of the goddess, or specifically, some people like working with ancient gods and goddesses if they want to do a particular spell. So ancient Greek gods and goddesses, ancient Egyptian ones, Roman ones. So Aphrodite if you wanted to do a love spell. When I talk about love spells, remember, I'm not talking about love spells on a particular person to get them to fall in love with you. I'm talking about a generic love spell, perhaps to find a love spell to put the energies out there to help you find that special person in your life. I'm not talking about a spell to tamper with someone else's heart, because the most important thing with any religion is free will and conscience. A major aspect of witchcraft, and especially the belief that I follow, is actually moon magic. And with any pagan pathway, moon magic plays a really important part because the energies of the moon are one of the most powerful energies to work with. So, to explain very briefly, the full moon, that is the time, that's really the best time to do any spells and rituals, because that's the time when the energy is at its most powerful. However, if you want to do a spell about something increasing or getting bigger, perhaps you want to do a spell to increase your wages, to find a new job, to find a house, to help conceive a child, you would do that in the time when the energies of the moon are growing. So from the new moon, from the period of the new moon to the full moon, which is the waxing period, when you can actually see the phase of the moon in the sky in consecutive nights get bigger. However, if you want to do a spell about endings of things decreasing, that would be, you would do that in the period after the full moon to the new moon. So on consecutive nights, the waning moon, each phase would be getting smaller and smaller. And those kind of spells might involve ending a relationship, the strength to hand in your notice for a job, perhaps banishing someone from your life who's a negative influence, anything that you want to get rid of. Perhaps it might be an aspect of yourself. Perhaps you feel that you're becoming very depressed. You want to get rid of that depression. So you would do a spell in the waning moon. So you're working with retreating moon energies. With paganism, I should say, there's 8 festivals throughout the year that are really, really important to any pagan, whether you're Wicca, whether you're a druid, whether you're a witch, whether you're a shaman. And these all represent different things and different energies. So if I start from the first month of the year, the earliest one, which is February, and that festival is called Imbolc, and that's about light. That's a time when we've been through winter, we've been through the darkness, and light is gaining on us, and there's hope. So that the festival of Imbolc is really about hope, so it's a great time to do spells based on hope and things improving in your life. March the 21st is the spring equinox, and of course that's celebrating the warmer weather, things getting even lighter than Imbolc. It's around Easter as well, and of course that's parallel with Easter's a pagan festival, but of course the Christian Church and a lot of other religions have said that's to do with the resurrection. But the reason we have Easter eggs is because it's to do with fertility. So it will be a good time perhaps to try for a baby, but it doesn't literally mean that. It's about new beginnings, new life. It's a time when the lambing season is ripe. It's the time when you're really starting to see signs of spring and there's hope in the air. One of them, the next festival is called Beltane, which is May, and that's summer. Really, that's a summer festival. That's traditionally in the centuries past. That was when people used to really celebrate fertility, and fertility rites is a really great time for trying for a baby again. But because it's the start of summer, it's really about celebrating summer and thanking the gods and goddesses for the warmer weather and appreciating the flowers and the seasons. It's a really beautiful time. June 21st is the Summer Solstice, and of course it's the longest day, and it's a time of appreciating the summer we've had and the last few weeks of summer. Lammas is another word for Lammas, which is in August, is the Harvest Festival, and that's about thanking the gods and goddesses for the summer we've had. Literally harvesting the food. Again, these can all be kind of explained right back to previous centuries when people were absolutely dependent on the harvest and dependent on the weather and their crops. So this was a time of thanks and celebration and harvesting the crops that they had for the hard winter ahead. The next festival after that is the autumn equinox in September, and that's preparing yourself for the cold months ahead, and again giving thanks for the summer. The next one is technically very controversial, which is Samhain. You might know that is Halloween, and it's actually one of the most powerful festivals in the pagan religion because it's really witches' New Year. It's a time when the veils between the spirit world and our world are the thinnest. An absolutely perfect time for doing magic. So, Halloween or Samhain is an incredibly important special time in the witches' calendar. And although it's also a time of a lot of fun in UK and in America, we carve pumpkins, we dress up. It's meant to be a time where there's a lot of evil spirits about. But actually, what that's all about is casting out negative influences from our lives. Samhain being New Year, which is New Year, it's about a time of thanking what we've had and for endings. So it's a really great time if you're in a very difficult relationship. It's actually a really good time to end that relationship. It's a good time to take stock on what you've done in the previous year and where you want to go. It's an all-round incredibly powerful time for magic. A lot of people traditionally use it as a time for scrying. So because the energies, the veils between the two worlds are so thin, it's said that if you look into the mirror on Halloween, on Samhain, on midnight, you will see your future partner. It's also a good time for scrying, where you have a cauldron or a bowl of water and you'll be able to see the future. The last festival is around Christmas time, December 21st, the winter solstice, otherwise known as Yule. And because it's a winter festival, traditionally it's about bringing in the Yule log, sitting by the fire, telling stories, keeping warm, being grateful that you've got enough food to eat, a shelter, clothes on your backs to keep warm. Generally, again, a lot of these festivals are giving thanks to the gods and goddesses and being grateful for the crops, because that's where they originated from in centuries past, when people were absolutely reliant on the weather and on crops. But I'm going to now speak to you a little bit, do some show and tell pieces and go through some of the tools that I use on a regular basis. So, over here, this is sculpture of a witch, and actually she's an incense holder. You can see in her back here. She's one of my favourite characters and really powerful for me. With the witchcraft that I do, because it's not Wicca and therefore not structured, the altar setups that I create and the spells, it's all about using tools that feel right for me, rather than going with particular colours, going with a time of night, which is what some people in the Wiccan religion really subscribe to. But I always use her because she helps to focus my mind, and because she looks like a traditional witch, that really helps focus my energies. So she has a little crystal ball here. You can see a broomstick. She also has a cat. another of my favourites, which is an Egyptian Sphinx. And because I'm a real cat person, cats are very special to me, and of course in witchcraft, traditionally there are witches' familiars, and the reason they're a traditional symbol is because they're so independent and they're so wise and mystical. They're very powerful creatures, I believe. Over here is my cauldron. It's got a previous spell I've done. When I've done my spells, I put my intention into a little bag like this. It doesn't really matter what bag. And pop that back into the cauldron. And because I did it on a full moon, I left that out at night, so to really gain the good effects of the moon's energies. This over here is my salt pot. There's a pentacle there. Salt is really good for creating protection circles, and circles and spirals are really good for focusing the energy. So if you want to create a circle when you're doing a spell, which is what the Wiccans do, and sometimes I do, you can either do that with your broomstick, where you're walking in a circular motion clockwise, and you're sweeping as you go, which really focuses the energies, or you can use a salt circle. It doesn't really matter which. These are the easiest way to explain is they're very similar to the way tarot works. So they all have different shapes on them. So you throw these onto the floor or onto the table, and depending which way they come up, that will tell you the answer. The dots, these tend to mean definitely yes. These are maybe. And these lines are no. And it's whichever stick comes out on top when you throw them onto the table in front of you. Had this since I was very young, and it's a little fairy pot, as I've just said. It's very special to me. So again, a lot of the things that you'll have on your altar when you're doing spells will be personal to you, rather than what a spell book or something you buy in a bookshop will tell you to have. Because the more special it is to you, the more significant and meaningful, the powerful the energies you will create, and the more successful your spell would be. So I've had this about 15 years. Actually longer, I think probably 20 years I had this. Had this for a long time. This is another thing that's special to me. This was a pebble I picked up in a beach, and it's been eroded by the sea. It feels lovely to the touch. It's nice sometimes just to hold it with your eyes closed and meditate with the shape. You might find that you'll have your own special pebble or shell that means a lot to you, that brings back really lovely memories, or that you're something that you just like the shape of. Another good way of making the energies a little bit more powerful is using incense. And while you can use incense sticks, they tend to have quite a flowery smell, which can smell a bit like air freshener, which isn't as nice. So what I use is homemade incense, not by myself. I'm not as talented as that. But the homemade incense works by, so firstly you have these charcoal rings, and you hold this over a candle flame and you light that, and it will sparkle. And then you put it on a very strong heat-proof surface, so perhaps in the cauldron or on an oven tray, and it will keep sparkling and fizzing. And after 10 minutes it will go white, and when that's gone white, that means it's ready for the incense, and it's ready. That's the base. You're then ready to put on your magical incense, and this is the incense I love using. I'm not sure if you can see, I think it's a bit out of focus, but it says Earthwise Magical Powder. Show you in there. It's a shame you can't smell it. It basically just looks like herbs, but when you sprinkle that onto the charcoal, which I've just showed you that's gone white, it will steam and give off the most incredible scent, and that can really take you into deep relaxation and sometimes even a trance. It's not a drug or anything like that, but the smell being so powerful, it really takes you back in time. You can get these homemade incense from all kinds of shops and online for different things. This one is specifically for magical working. 10 years ago when I was at university, I used one that helped me focus on study. So that's a very brief introduction to witchcraft and my beliefs and my tools. The only thing I wasn't able to show you because it was too large for the video camera was my broomstick. And that's one of the most important tools any witch could have. It sounds very cliched, but it's really good again for focusing and raising the energies at the beginning of a spell. I got my broomstick, I would say 18 years ago when I was 12, if my maths is up to it. I'm in my 30s now, so I've had it a long, long time. I got it for my 12th birthday present. And I've used it ever since. It's gone with me to university, to several house moves. It's really very important to me. But you don't need to use a broomstick if you don't want to. It might be that you just don't feel comfortable. And the main thing in witchcraft is you're using tools and objects that are personal and meaningful to you.